Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. We are here, and so we might as well start. It's 8 minutes early. Why not? Why not, I say? Why not? So, not joined us for a while. Good evening, or good afternoon to you, Alan Yu, there in Canada Stan. How are you, sir?
Good.
Very good. And, of course, Bruce and Nicola with us there. So, let's just run through a couple of things before we go any much further. Did we see the Quantum Systems and the ESG presents UAS World Novelty, Vector and Scorpion, the tricopter that becomes an aeroplane? Did anyone have any thoughts on that? Oh dear.
Yeah, what Bruce did.
Oh, so we're not super excited about this change in direction and
change it. Well, like
what?
More of the same.
Yeah, you've got a separate tricopter and a separate plane. Can't use them at the same time. So what's the point of all of this?
Well, the plane will do the VTOL hover gig and then fly off and transition away. I guess. Yeah. Why would you? I haven't thought this through. It's why would you want to turn it into just a hexacopter? Oh, sorry, a tricopter, I wonder. Yeah, and it looks like
because you want to make it less efficient all of a sudden. It's a new trend.
Lower efficiencies.
Yeah.
Well, it's for the military market, and something which I didn't flag up is and I've forgotten the name of it. But in America, the bill is moving forward to ban, and I think they're just about to utterly destroy their not destroy, that's the wrong word, but the choices available to the US military are going to be rapidly reduced, as they are actually looking to buy stuff that is entirely made in the US. That's every single component part of the UAS system. And I'm wondering, somebody spoke to me about it today, and I know about the Blue Cube and stuff like that, but what about motors and speed controllers and all that sort of thing? Are there any still 100% made in America? Do you know of any of them, Bruce?
No, Castle Creations. I don't know if they're still making stuff in the USA, but yeah, I mean, there is a move to bring some stuff back from China, actually, because labor costs and things in China have got pretty expensive. And if you set yourself up a fully automated factory, there's not a lot of price difference between doing it in China and doing it in the USA. So I suspect it's probably part of the whole Trump administration's thing to close the trade doors and lock all the rest of the world out and make America great again by building substandard components. I don't know. But yeah, it's because they closed the doors on Mexico. They got tariffs on Mexico, tariffs on China. You know, pretty soon they will be an economic island, fully self-sufficient, and forbidding anyone to do anything or buy anything from outside the borders of the country. And give it a go, see what happens.
Well, there's a thing moving through the House there. I should have written it down, but it's looking like it's happening, and it'll be so the military suppliers are rushing around looking for all the bits. So let's see it. We're looking at that VTOL there, so that means we've got to source that those propellers. We've got to source the motors. As I say, Castle Creations did come to my mind, but something tells me it's not. Only the bill's not. You still won't be able to buy from friendly companies. It is about US only, or friendly countries. US only, which gosh, very, very tricky. Very, very tricky. All right. So what we've decided on this one is it probably isn't the best long-range aircraft nor the best long-range tricopter.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because it's only the American military buying it. They got endless amounts of money and they look after their mates.
Fair enough then. Well, there we are. It looks good. It looks very cool. That's one thing. We like it. It looks cool. But one product I did see this week is Drone Shield have launched their RF Patrol, which is basically a little handheld receiver device that says, I can hear a phantom and I can hear a parrot. And I think that's probably one of the most sensible things I've seen in that arena so far.
At what price?
Oh, it's for the military. It'll be made of pure titanium.
There's a thing you can make anything if you're prepared to spend enough money, but does it represent a good value? And if it doesn't represent good value, why does it even exist? And there's in today's modern environment, if you read the Daily Mail, it'll just be popping beeps up all the time because the damn things are everywhere spying on us. We're sunbathing by our pools. And in a military context, I don't know, because what people forget in the military context, quite often there's a lot of electronic countermeasures already active in a battlefield. Will you actually be able to pick anything up? I don't know. Have they tested it in the field, or is it just a lab experiment that's come out into commercial production? Everyone's rolling out these solutions to problems that don't exist, and it's a great way to make money, but is it really practical?
Absolutely. Look, we're coming on to the hour, so people will be joining us for the bulk of the meat of the sandwich here. And really the meat of the sandwich is talking to Alan today about, and we'll come on to the other stories later on because it'll feed into all that, but it's talking about the changes in Canada. You've done a couple of great videos about it, Bruce and Alan, on his channel. If you haven't seen it, Alan will tell us in a minute where to find it, but Alan does a great vlog. So how's life for you now? June the 1st, didn't it come in, Alan?
For the most part, for myself, it seems the same, but I can imagine for a lot of other people, it's basically a debate between it benefits a lot for commercial people as opposed to the recreational, just because of the exam, the questions, they didn't fix it or anything like that. So it's one of those things. Do you abide by this or not? So that seems to be the mixed opinion here. Some people are just like, yeah, I'm going to fly it anyways. Whereas some people, they're really afraid because all the news here is all about the fines. If you don't abide by the rules, you can get fined and so forth.
And the fines seem to be many, or there seems to be many ways of falling foul of the regulations now. Many places to trip up. Should you fly your machine into Mrs. Miggins' greenhouse, they'll find plenty of ways to get you. And who would be knocking on your door for that? Would the policeman be referring you to the Civil Aviation Authority, or would the policeman have the power to do that?
Well, to my understanding, it's supposed to be Transport Canada will be regulating it. And then if they need help from, say, the law enforcement, then they'll ask them to say, hey, we have this guy, like, go question him and so forth. But the question is whether or not, like people say, there's not enough manpower for people to walk around the public, like randomly a police guy, just to see like, oh, this guy's flying a drone. Let me bring up my weight scale here to make sure this is over 250 grams. Use some kind of measuring tape or something to see how high you are. Like, that just seems so impractical. So a lot of people are saying this is more thrown out there just for the sake of, I guess, for people to show that they're doing something, like for the drone regulations, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that it just means they've got a good sized book to throw at you should you have an incident that comes to the attention of the authorities. Well, what's your thoughts on that sort of thing, Bruce? Sorry, Alan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it is. It's one of those things that if you're not making a nuisance of yourself, you're probably pretty good. But what concerns me is what, say, a group of eco-terrorists decided to fly drones near one of your big airports to make a point. The public's response would be deal with these drones, and then the authorities might decide, let's make some examples of people, let's go out there, let's have a bit of a blitz and a bit of a clampdown, and they've got all these weapons with which to turn otherwise safe, innocent people into criminals and charge them large amounts of money for daring to do something like fly their drone without making sure the battery's fully charged first, all that sort of thing. There's so many little details in those drone regulations which are completely pointless, but they've been included because it looks like they've got the manned aviation handbook and they've just transferred it over into the unmanned aviation handbook. And so a lot of the stuff is totally irrelevant. Even in the exam that Alan had to sit, a lot of the stuff was just no relevance to drone operations. And they haven't also looked at it from the perspective that over 90% of all the drone operations are recreational. It does benefit commercial users, as Alan says, because they had a fairly tight framework before. But this new rule framework tends to be treating everyone as if they're commercial operators, with all the same restrictions and constraints, when only less than 10% of the people who are going to be affected by these rules are actually commercial operators. Why does Alan need to keep a flight log of every flight he makes and the people that were involved in the flight and the time and the date? Why does he need to make a note every time he changes a propeller or gets his gimbal repaired, and include, was it when he's out flying, he has to keep a copy of his manual for his drone in case someone comes up to him and says, I need to see the manual for your drone because it's a legal requirement now. These little stupid things which you can understand in the case of manned aviation where lives are at stake are completely irrelevant to the average recreational flyer in the park with his little, 1 kg or smaller drone, just having a little bit of fun and endangering nobody. That's the big problem. And so the hooks in the regulations are there so that if they decide to, they can make an example of you. They can really, make people's lives a misery. And it can happen at a high level where the government decides, well, we're going to have to show the public that we're clamping down on drones, so we're going to have a blitz and we're going to visit all the parks and make sure everyone's totally compliant. And nobody will be totally compliant. There's so many gotchas in those rules. You'll be able to find anyone in violation of something if you want to. But also there's this situation where you get, Mountie Bill, he on his horse with his little hat, and he decides he doesn't like you, and he decides, I'm going to get you, I don't like you. So he comes out with all the regulations. And he basically finds that you haven't done this or haven't done that, and he can issue you with fines. Because the whole thing, having dealt with the powers that be over many years, I know that there is huge room for abuse if people decide they want to abuse that power. And the only protections you've got as an individual are a reasonable regulatory framework. And I don't think this is reasonable, not for recreational flyers. I think it's so over the top that people are going to be victimized sooner or later. And it may be sooner rather than later, because with all this public opinion that, drones are spying on us, drones are dangerous, drones are this, there's going to be a need for the government to show that they're doing something. And the best way to show you're doing something is to catch some people doing bad things and fine them. And then you can say, look, we have done all this, so now it's safe. It's rubbish. That's what I think.
So, Alan, tell us about your logbook and a logbook situation. Smooth Virus saying, show us your operation manual. It's actually a very good point. So you've got DJI gear, haven't you, Alan?
Yes.
What operations manual do you have for that machine?
The manual is literally going to be a PDF file on your phone of the Mavic Pro, like the one that I use. And basically,
they'll accept that.
Yes, it is, because that's what's provided by the manufacturer. That's the rules. So as long as you have that on copy, that's okay. But we were even mentioning before, like even in the class I took, it doesn't say anything in there really, but they're like, shrug shoulders. That's what they want from the regulations. You leave it in there. It doesn't help you in any way. So it's more just like a legality.
Last week when I was Dodgy Connection, I mentioned we were asked to in Kenya to come up with different language stuff for balloon operations, and we just used a VCR instructions and took out the Chinese and Japanese bits, pasted next to pictures, and said, "Oh no, that's it. That's really the words."
Mm-hmm.
So you can, it's so that's to accept that as the operation. So how do they? Because if you're going to go down this route of having operations manuals, this is a rant I didn't want to go on, but you're going to have what is the latest edition? How are they going to know what the latest edition is? How are they going to know what the service bulletins are and all that sort of thing? There's an awful lot to it. So, but what I did want to say was, what are you doing for your logging then, for your airframe logging and your pilot logging now? Because your Mavic's over 250 grams.
For myself right now, I'm just using the flight log in the DJI app, because when you fly, it actually records your flight logs. You get like a visual reference of where you flew and where you took off. So to me, that is the log, so to speak.
It's insufficient. It's insufficient because if there's anyone else when you're flying, you've got to get their names and include it in the log.
I brought that question up during when I went to the ground school, and basically my question was that because, as you guys know, with one of the new regulations here, as before, you can't fly near people, for example, unless they're part of the operation. So my example was like, what I do is, what if I'm going hiking? People, they do it all the time. They're like, fly near me, like capture me. Technically, they become part of the operation. So I asked them, are you expecting me to write down their names and everything like that? Like they're part of my team now? And they basically said, well, all they worry about, like Transport Canada, is the pilot in command. That's what they said, which would be me. And they said in terms of writing those people's name down, that's more for your own liability. If in case like one... Yeah, that's what they told me.
Yeah, the regulations state that the crew name have to be included. So if they are delegated or designated as being part of the operation, then even though someone says, oh, Transport Canada is only interested in the pilot, if Transport Canada decide to take you and make an example of you, they'd say, where are the names of the people in this video who were part of the operation? They're not in your flight log. You've broken regulation 901. Whatever. This is the problem. If these aspects of the regulation are not going to be enforced, then they shouldn't be in there.
And then also, is there a requirement to move your digital copies of flight logs to paper copies after a certain number of times? I think here, think you're allowed to keep digital copies for 3 months, and it must turn into paper. Do you have to turn it into paper at some point?
I haven't read anything like that. It's just that you have to keep them on record for X amount of time, and you just have to be able to provide it on demand, so to speak. So it's a digital copy should be okay from my own research here.
But you've also got to be if you sell a drone, you've got to include the
Yes.
flight logs and the maintenance logs. So
Yeah.
really, if you've got more than one drone, you want to keep a separate log for each drone rather than just building them all into one, so that you can easily split that out to give to the
Yeah.
new owner of the drone. Yeah.
Indeed.
Oh lordy, yes, of course I hadn't thought about that. Oh, how complex! How complex. Well, look, I mean, I suppose let's try and put some positive spin on that. Is that there should be some good data about different types of airframes coming along after a couple of years of this. If people do log all the stuff, then we'll have some more accurate mean time between failure stuff and things like that, if you want to be positive about it. But yeah, they are gonna pick someone, aren't they? They're gonna pull someone out. Someone's gonna, as you say, if they run out of battery power, then you have had insufficient fuel for the flight, and that's another $1,000. But that'll be, because when that thing goes into the crowd, then that'll be the time to pull that person out and then see what they've been doing.
Mhm.
It's interesting in this FAA conference that's been going on this week. They say that drones are absolutely certainly outnumber manned aircraft 4-1 now. So I'm sure the same is in Canada. So just imagine the paperwork being generated. But then, if we want to play this game, no aircraft shall fly until the paperwork exceeds the all-up weight of the aircraft. So that is the natural way to do things. Victor's making a good point. Just realize, if you show them the PDF on your phone, you've given them permission to search your phone for anything. That's an interesting idea. I wonder. Maybe. And Blue Flyer, good evening to you. Paper copies, well, way to exist in the 21st century. What about all the rainforests? Yeah, I know, but that's what the regulator still requires. And then if you have I think you've got to store them for 5. There's also a number of years you've got to store these things for as well, if it absolutely complies, and you've got to store them in a manner which isn't under the bookcase at the back of the garage, sort of a thing as well. Yeah, no, it's crazy stuff. Now, does this apply? This applies to all model flyers as well, then, Alan, over there?
They do have an exemption for those Mag Clubs that they released recently. So basically, they will be exempt, to my understanding, with the rules within like their airfields and abiding by their own guidelines, so to speak.
And the big problem also is for tourists, because you have to be a resident or a citizen to fly a drone in Canada. If you're a visitor with a drone, you've got to apply for a special flight operating certificate, as I understand it. And
Yes.
that requires 30 working days prior notice, lots and lots of paperwork. So don't bother taking your drone to Canada unless it's less than 250 grams.
And do sub 250 and all your woes have gone away. Hands up, who thinks the next big DJI release will be 249 grams?
When doubted.
Well, they're definitely moving that way, and that will keep them under the radar in a lot of places in the world. Blue Fly is saying hello to you, Nicola, by the way. I need to mention that in the comments. Now, I'm sure we'll
saying what now?
No, go back to your cave. Go back to your corner. just you're being said hello to in the comments. No, Tom Fraser saying no matter how much you regulate and ban, the ones that want to do any harm will, which is absolutely true. And before our very eyes, we're watching model aviation disappear. We should be talking about drones and the industry and that sort of thing. But I'm pretty passionate about model aviation, and we're watching it go. We've been ranting about this for a couple of years, and it's just happening. And well, I'm sure we'll keep talking about Canada. Please stick with us there, Alan. But Bruce touched on it. Bruce touched on, well, what if then some people then went to go and fly near a major airport? And of course, I'm talking about the Extinction Rebellion's threat to have picnics around Heathrow and fly drones. And I thought they were very, very very civilized. They said when they were going to do it, how they were going to do it, and where they were going to do it. And there are existing regulations in the UK that if they did take the thing out, flew it out of the hand, there was a policeman there, then they'd be clobbered for it. And I thought it was a brilliant time to test counter UAS systems. If they really work, well, let's see what you have. But my word, people got very anti that. Even you, Bruce, you put out a video about it.
Yeah, of course I did, because it paints the whole flying community in a bad light. And it's something that we need to, as a community, stand up and say, this is not right. You know, we need to make our own voice heard, that we are not part of this. We don't endorse this. We don't condone this. We object to it strongly. So, because otherwise the media will just say, drone flyers disrupt flights again at Heathrow. And it's like, we are tarred with the brush of this group. And I got really annoyed that a group with their own little agenda would feel quite comfortable throwing us under a bus just to get their 15 minutes of fame on, or 3 minutes on the news on a evening. Totally unsatisfactory. But so I've had some feedback that this wasn't actually the main plan, although I think it's a bit of backpedaling, to be totally honest, because I did see a tweet that said, we're going to fly drones, but there's been no, it was only a thought. It was only one of the many suggestions. So, but what would you achieve by having a picnic in a field near an airport if you weren't going to disrupt the flight operations? There'd be no one would have covered that. No one, the media wouldn't be interested. So yes, I do believe there was a plan to do this, but I think they've got so much flack, especially from me, that they've decided to backtrack a little, and they've realised that there may be more negative outcomes than positives if they were actually to go ahead with this.
But they've made their point and it's worked. They got the press coverage they needed. There's no, and this is what we said about Gatwick and what we've said about anything. You just need to, you don't even need to own. You just need to own one of these things and call an airport and say you've seen one.
Yeah, I think they should have arrested them. They should have arrested them for conspiracy, because if you announce the intention to commit a crime, it's a conspiracy and it's a punishable offence. It's a crime. To say to plan and organise a criminal offence is a crime. It's a conspiracy. So why not charge some of them? Let them know you can't just shout hijack or fire in a room without repercussions. If you're going to say you're going to do something illegal, then you'll be held accountable for that plan.
I don't think the modern world works like that, does it? It doesn't seem to. It seems to have gone out the window, that sort of thinking and being. And
well, it's still on the statutes in most countries. Conspiracy is still a crime. Conspiracy to commit an offence is still a crime, and it should be punished as such. If you wait until I've done it, what's the point in having a conspiracy rule or law?
Yeah, well, it's been very interesting. It continues to be very interesting, the noise that people are making about it, and it's still, well, I was thinking I should have made the video. I was thinking, well, let's just go to a UK online laws, because people say, well, it's going to ban, they'll all be using DJI or whatever. And you think, well, no, they won't be. They can just go to a toy shop and buy something out of a toy shop. It's the same thing. So I went to some UK toy shops to see what sort of radio controlled things I could buy. And I must admit, more of an indicator that these regulations have an effect than not. I think already there's very few to choose from, and there's not the planes, they're not there. The toys, the flying toys aren't there. So already have the toy shops decided, yeah, this is all a bit too much of a naff, really. Rather, let's not have these things for sale, and have moved them out of the market. So even as a protester, I would struggle to get an RC flying thing online. I'd have to go to Hobby King and all the other things that we know.
That shows the sanity of the Canadian sub 250 laws. The English still want to be able to police children's toys. If you flew the little Cheerson CX-10 20 gram thing near an airport, you're just as guilty as if you fly a 15 kilogram optocopter in the same place. Whereas the Canadians are quite sensibly saying, well, that toy ain't going to hurt anything, so you can do what you like. As long as you don't endanger aviation or endanger people, you can do whatever the hell you want with it because it's safe. Whereas the English can't seem to get their head around the fact that something this big has a different risk profile to something that big, which is, and again, this is the whole regulation thing around the world. The Canadians have shown it with their flight logs and all this sort of stuff. Each country has shown that they don't really understand the technologies they're regulating. They seem to think we're all flying huge drones with massive weight and huge potential to cause injury and death. And because in America, even the 250 gram cutoff is only for registration. The rules still apply right down to 1 gram. So it's like, seriously, without the risk analysis, you can't come up with good regulation, and you are penalising a huge swathe. The recreational flyers basically being penalised because they want to control the people with their big, red camera equipped octocopters that if they fell on your head, they'd kill you. So, but why don't they just segment it by mass like other countries are doing? Buffoons. We've got idiots in charge of the rules.
Yeah, but you could argue that about everything that happens in life, I guess. But it does. Are we witnessing? So we've watched model flying being. There goes the bus. Look, let's throw it under the bus. That's gone under the bus. Now, are we watching the way that aviation regulations and things that happen I think perhaps we're at the cusp of a change in the whole thinking. It has to be for that because Amazon and co are about to buy the airspace. So things will have to change to fit whatever they want to happen. Are we going to see a big change in general aviation as well? I need to go to the comments. There's a few in here. Tello, yeah, the Tello's okay. That's a lot less than 250. NRA of the AMA. We need an NRA for SUAS or Planned Parenthood for SUS for Rivat. And Smooth Viruses says people have gone to jail for flying Cheerson class quadcopters in the District of Columbia, Washington. We'll have to look at that. And then, thank you, MacVision. Most innovation occurs in hybrid. Exactly. It's like amateur radio, another sort of nerdy thing I'm into. It sheds at the bottom of the garden where the husband has been banished with his hobby, where he comes up on those long cold nights of avoiding children with the latest great thing. And it is. I suppose we've hit a point where the technology's good enough for some people to think they can make a stack of money, and they want those people in the shed to shut the door and go away. They don't want to see their innovation. Have you got any thoughts on that, Bruce?
You did right. I mean, if you look at it, where did all this multi-rotor quadcopter craze come from? Hobbyists. We started building these things, 10 years ago? And we started making them fly. And, no one in the commercial world was interested. They were just toys. They were just curiosities. No one was building this stuff. If you looked at drone from a commercial military perspective, it was fixed wing, or, it wasn't a small multi-rotor with high definition cameras. We, as a group of amateurs, have created the product. We've created the demand for commercial companies to come in and build products to meet that demand. We have created this industry, and now the industry saying, go away, we don't need you anymore. We just want your airspace. And so if they do that, they're very short-sighted because we're not at the end of the evolution yet. And commercial companies aren't going to evolve the technology at the rate that amateurs do. I mean, look at that tricopter fixed wing thing you're talking about earlier. I mean, God, that's so old hat. Reinvent the wheel. People have been doing this stuff from an amateur perspective for years, and then some commercial company comes out and says, look, we've put lift rotors on a fixed wing. Isn't this clever? And everyone goes, yeah, we did that 5 years ago. What are you talking about? So the amateur developers are so far ahead of the curve in terms of the products, and the commercial side of things is just leveraging that and catching up years later. So if we ankle tap the hobby community, the people that are doing it are going to find that their source of inspiration, their source of new development has disappeared. And in 5 years' time, they'll be stagnated. And what will they do then?
I think they already are. I think there is a bit of a hiatus in development and stuff like that, and what people really want. Ray Cloud asking about the Wii controller. Yeah, that was the what was a multi-Wii, wasn't it? Where is one? That's what that became. That was Russian chap that did that.
You want a Wii controller? Nintendo Wii? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Those were used for tricopters. Funny enough, back
this
in the
stuff?
day. Yeah,
really?
Exactly.
Use this?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very hard when you put the propellers on that. It's very hard to keep it under 250 grams. But you could do it. Yeah, no, they were. It was the multi-Wii, wasn't it? In the end. And the chap had that flying wing very, very nicely, and tricopters back in the day, the heady days of 2007, 2008, 2009, Open Pilot. Yes, that's right. Yes, well, that was Open Pilot was. Yeah, it was just straight after that, and that was CC3D was the first. Pull up a sandbag, first square 32mm board.
You know what worries me? At the moment is, as I've said, the regulators really are They don't have all their chairs under the table. They're, sandwiched short of a picnic, a lot of them. They're basically just copy and pasting stuff without any real understanding what they're doing. And I actually think that the sub-250 freedoms that Canada is enjoying won't last long, because someone's going to say, hey, did you know people are still flying drones and these rules don't apply? And someone's going to go, oh my God, who's responsible for that? And then it'll all be a case of, we need to fix, like the UK did with this ANO, because previously in the UK, below 250 were exempt from the airfield restrictions. Then they suddenly, someone slipped up, put that in there. So new ANO goes right down to 0 grams. I think someone is going to, and if that happens, they need to be called on it. You're so stupid. You made such a huge mistake like that. You're not fit and proper people to be making these regulations. I'm sorry, but if I was sort of a militant type, which of course I'm not, I'm very compliant and I have great respect for authority. I would say, right, until you people get your act together and consult with us, the 90% stakeholders in the use of this airspace, we're going to ignore your rules. We're not going to follow your regulations. We're just going to fly safely. And if you've got anything against us flying safely, tell us now. Otherwise, you can take your rules and you can find a warm, cozy place to put them in the meantime. I mean, that sort of civil disobedience is the only thing that's really going to have an effect.
Well, the crazy thing about this is there wasn't really a problem before. The rules have come in and there still won't be a problem in the future. But what they'll say is, look, we brought these rules in and look, there's no problems now. But there wasn't any problems to start with.
You mean there's no proven cases of airliners coming close to drones?
Well, we could go, yes, let's jump straight to that. Yeah, very good, very good. We're here all week. Mentioning the NRA, as it were, for SUS or for drone operators, Simon Wilkinson in the UK. Simon's been a fantastic bloke for a lot of things. He really has helped, and he's been sat in the background, and he's started a website, AirProx Reality Check, and the idea is to take the pilot reports and then score them on things like, I should have had one up in front of me to give you an idea, but if something's 10 kilometers offshore and at 9,000 feet, is that likely really to be reality? And of course it's not. And I say fair play to them. But this is another thing. So first of all, this Extinction Rebellion, people were up in arms about this, and people are just calling fake news, what a load of rubbish, why are they bothering wasting their time? And this is our people, man, our people in the forums and groups that are in aero modeling or drone flying are calling this out as nonsense, and you can never tell the man. I think it's a really good effort, and it deserves support. And I'll read what it says. In all cases, UKAB has no confirmation that a drone has flown close to an aircraft other than the reports made by the pilots. Similarly, other than from the report of the pilots, UKAB has no confirmation that a drone was involved. I'll post a link. Yeah, I'll post a link. You're right. I'll do that in the comments. What do you think? Do you think it's a waste of time, Bruce, or?
No. It points out that I find it interesting that the US military, the US Navy at least, has now acknowledged UFOs. And what we've got here is we've got pilots reporting UFOs as drones in the case of the airliners. So why don't they just be honest and say, we saw an object, we couldn't identify, it was a UFO. That's what the military are doing. They're honest, they're up front, they're straight, they're not calling all these things drones. And so if you're not prepared to state the truth, you have an agenda. And there's an obvious agenda going on here with the vilification of drones by airline pilots who are increasingly worried that their livelihoods are going to be restricted or at risk. And because look at all these urban transport and mobility things. No commercial pilots flying those, is there? So they're just looking out for their livelihoods, and they're committing a fraud on the public by calling something a drone when they had no idea what it was. It could have been a number 5 bus from Piccadilly, for all they know. But that's not the agenda. So yeah, I think this is a very important thing, and I've passed this information on to certain people, and I think here in New Zealand it may have some effect because we have the same problem. We have all these AirProx reports which are unevidenced, unsubstantiated, single person eyewitness, and when you look at the actual conditions, there's no way that could have been a drone. Yeah, sure, they might have seen something, but there's no way it could have been a drone because we don't have any multi-rotor drones capable of flying 22 kilometers offshore and at 35,000 feet. I mean, it's just a physical impossibility.
Yeah. So they I'm going to type Magic School Bus, Victor, but the Magic School Bus flights. We all know that, Victor. Come on, Vic. But yeah, no. They take the reports that are that are given by the airprox people, and they just take them apart and say, well, this is why we think this is unlikely. And I think it's a fantastic idea, and I hope it keeps going.
Mind you,
You
I'm a
know,
little less skeptical now than I was before I saw Nicola's latest flight. It could have been him, with that Zod Talon Rebel thing. He flies so far away and so high, reckless, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to see them noticing that white plane at 10,000 meters up in the air through the window of a plane going 800 kilometers an hour. That'll be something.
but you like that ugly, expensive thing, don't you?
It's not expensive when you consider how much work has gone into it to get it to your door and enable you to literally put it together in 5 minutes and go out flying. I don't think that's as expensive.
It's
And
still ugly.
more to the point, you don't have to fix anything on it out of the box, because most of the planes I get, I do have to repair before I actually assemble them and go fly them, because they're just poorly designed.
But obviously, Nikolai, you did feel that you needed to fix something, so you broke the nose off it.
Yeah, well, had to prove a point.
But you've been enjoying it. Well, you've both had one and reviewed it. So what's the bottom line? Is it a keeper?
Yep.
Yeah, they're good. They fly really well. They fly very well. I know there's a guy, Matt Ogborn in the UK, said, it's just a knockoff of the Mini Talon. But it's inspired by the Mini Talon. I mean, everything, if you look at most planes, they have pretty similar attributes: wings, tails, fuselage, control surfaces. So everything is a knockoff of something. And I think they've done a good job of packaging it up. And as Nicola says, it is a model where if you value your time more than your money, it is a good deal.
Yeah.
There we are.
And that nose thing, I can't stress that enough, how convenient this thing is. I mean, I can't remember the last time where I got a plane and just put 2 cameras in it in a minute and was done with that. Usually it takes half a day of cutting and gluing and whatnot to get anything in there, and it ends up looking ugly as shit.
Actually, I think you stressed the nose more than enough on that landing.
Yeah. No, but it did good, actually. I did glue it back together, and it glued back perfectly. No wrinkles, no nothing. If that was EPO, that would have looked horrendous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they seem to be making some well thought out models. Obviously, I'm pulling your chain. It is a bit on the expensive side for me, but I'm a cheapskate, so that's fair enough.
Well,
so you
is,
keep ranting without a microphone on, Bruce. That's cool. You keep going.
Who did that? I still hated that iFlight wing that I unboxed this week, which is 500 New Zealand dollars, I think, for that wing. That's super spendy. But again, if you got the money, people spend the most amazing amounts of money on stuff in this hobby. So when people say, "Oh, that's very expensive," it may be expensive to some people, but other people will just, some people spend like 20 grand on a turbine pad model and they think nothing of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the thing is, a Mini Talon, even with electronics, I think somebody mentioned this on Facebook, is like $70 cheaper than the Talon GT. And then you have to consider all the gluing, the building, the assembly, the mods you have to do to actually make it flyable. Hours and hours of work. And then you have to manufacture some box to put it in if you want to pack it up and transport it safely and make it easier to move around. This thing breaks down in 2 minutes back in its original box, and you can move it anywhere easily. Then you assemble it in 2 minutes. All you need is a screwdriver for the ventral fins, if you decide to use them, because it flies without them too. It's not going to be too big of an issue. So you don't even need that. So, a minute another minute off of that time. So literally in 5 minutes, you can be out of the box and in the air. 5 minutes. And that comes that comes like that from the factory. Show me another model that does that for $200.
Yes, you make a compelling and fair point. I've riled your cage enough, haven't I?
I'm still concerned that if you'd flown that to the top of the mountain and left it there, by now it would have biodegraded, because that's what that foam does, mate.
And I forgot to ask a question. Have we found the other one yet?
No, not yet. I haven't had a chance to fly, but I did get the new Firefly SE, the 8AC again with the 90-degree lens. So I'm going to be mounting that on the gimbal because that is going to crop in on the surface and I can fly actually higher and still get a more detailed image on the ground. But still have to, actually it's been raining for a week and a half, so no chance to go out flying either way. But on the topic of the foam, usually I use, I have no idea what it's called in other countries. Here it's a glue by Henkel. It's called Moment Classic. It's sort of like shoe glue or something. It's a universal glue that you can use for everything. And it says on it that you're not supposed to use it on styrofoam and EPO and stuff like that. Thing is, I've been using it for years to glue EPO planes with. It doesn't dissolve them. It just softens up the foam until it dries and then it hardens back up. But this BEPP foam, nothing. You can squeeze the whole tube over it and it doesn't soften, doesn't dissolve, nothing. Doesn't even notice the glue's there.
It doesn't
Pretty
stick
good
it
in
together.
my book. What?
It doesn't stick it together. I don't know.
No, it does. Actually, it makes an awesomely strong bond. That's why I'm using it. The thing is, you don't, with that material, you don't need Uhupor, which costs a ton of money for a very small amount. This thing is incredibly cheap and doesn't affect the foam in any way and makes a hell of a strong bond.
Well, you
I think the other thing that I think is a bit lacking with that plane is it's got a textured finish on the side, so you can't lam film it, because that would add significantly to the strength if you lam filmed it.
Yeah, probably, and also might make it slide better in the air. It is
aerodynamic
thousands,
a golf ball.
Thousands of little Zocht names injection molded on the sides of that fuselage. Weird choice, seriously, weird choice.
Did you count them?
No, not really, but you know, judging by the size of them, etc. Thing is, they might have been gunning for a sort of a golf ball effect, though I would have preferred the golf ball texture, not Zocht on it.
Yeah. That's so we should start up on a forum somewhere, isn't it? Talking about it's like the empty and full battery difference, you know, in performance and all that sort of thing. We need to have the golf ball. I haven't seen the golf ball one, hasn't done the circuit for a while. It needs to come out again. It definitely needs to come out again. Cricket ball for some of us, I suppose. Oh well, so then maybe I do. Maybe that is something I do have to go down and buy. Smooth Virus says, "Oh yes, your other plan will emerge from a glacier 50 years from now, like the British airliner in Argentina did." Yes. So if it's raining, there's probably no snow up on the top then.
I think not anymore. I think most of it is gone by now. But the thing is, it has been raining, and I've been busy with another project also, and doing this review, putting it together. Now I've been doing the written review for 2 days, and well, it's been raining, so no chance to go out flying, but still, weather has been weird this year.
Yeah, it's been weird.
And apparently it's going to stay like that for another month and a half, which is going to drive me crazy.
I think you need to join the eco-terrorists and camp outside Heathrow. Fix this climate change problem, eh?
No, I think what I need to do is just spray everything I have with this water repellent spray and just go out and fly in the rain.
Flying in the rain's fun. It's good, you know, as long as your gear is protected, it's fine. Just when
as long as you've got enough drainage holes in your plane.
But when it's halfway through the flight, you get this one drop of water lands right in the middle of the FPV camera lens, and it all just goes blurry. That's rather annoying.
You do. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Well, happens also when you go through a cloud or something.
But it doesn't matter because, of course, you're in visual line of sight at all times. So your observer has there is over there.
But the thing is, for you guys, I mean, you know, you're gonna be looking at the water drop for the whole flight. So
the other thing, though, is that in Canada, how can they fly in the winter? Because if you get any frost or ice or snow on your drone, you can't fly it. So how can you be sure that in the process of taking off, the props haven't flicked a bit of, you know, ice up onto the top of your Mavic? How are you dealing with that, Alan?
Well, basically, the rules say you can't fly if it's adhering to the drone. So for myself, anyways, when I fly, usually during the snow and stuff, I only fly for maybe 3 minutes to 5 minutes, and I come back down. Technically, like I said, when I bring it down, it's perfectly dry. I also brought up that point too, and they said, yeah, as long as it's perfectly okay in that sense, use common sense. It's not like if you're starting up the drone, the propeller has ice and stuff already on it, and then you fly. They said that's what it's more about.
Those people clearly don't understand how regulations work if they use the word common sense.
No. But it's interesting, isn't it, that it is so aviation, proper aviation. And does it really fit? Does it really matter? Should we really care? De-icing boots, yes. De-icing boots on the drone.
I noticed it with the ice and with the effectively, like in manned aviation, fuel reserves are a big thing in regulation and so forth. All that stuff is just carried over. There's no thought being given to whether it's relevant or not. And as I said at the beginning, Alan's exam proved that. They have even tailored the exams to the requirements of the pilots. It's like crazy stuff. And these people got paid for this, remember?
Well, there was a funny example about the test. I can't say the questions exactly, but let's just say I got a question about salt water, and I was like, "What in the world, salt water?" So I actually asked the school, like, "Where in the material in any Transport Canada aviation guideline can you find an answer to this?" They emailed Transport Canada because I can see it. They asked them for the answer. They never responded to them, so it's like they don't even know where to find the answers themselves.
Wow, that's mad. So you were a real thorn in the side of your course holder's course then?
No, they were actually fans. They actually watched like Bruce and stuff. They watched my stuff, so they actually knew me. So they're actually wondering why I was there. But still, because with their example too, what I found out with a lot of drone schools, even though they don't agree, like even they'll sit there and say, "How does this relate to a drone person?" They're trying to, in their own way, justify. We think this is what Transport Canada means. Like when they ask you this, so it just shows you everyone's kind of all over the place and figuring it out. Like they're not even telling these schools like we're asking you this because like it relates to this. It's just you threw something there. That's it.
And what's your sense?
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because that why go down the route of prescriptive regulation when you can do what you did with the 250 and issue goals? The thing, this is what we want to achieve. This is what we're aiming for, and you must do that rather than this is how you do it. Because by laying down prescriptive regulation, you are significantly compromising the ability of the person to perhaps choose the correct or the best path to that goal. And so they don't even understand how and when prescriptive regulation should be applied. And again, it's just a big worry.
It's carrots rather than sticks. Hey, thanks, eh? But then, because you, as a regulator, you want your end users to be engaged with you, and you want to get the safety message out and all those other good things. And I was going to ask you, Alan, what's your sense of the uptake? What's your sense of compliance there? Only can be a sense of it, I suppose.
Like overall, like in general for people?
Yeah, for all the Mavic owners, have they all gone out and taken the test, and are they all now logging stuff?
For the people that I know, I think most people they just did the basic test and registration. In terms of the logging and stuff, I don't think a lot of people are doing it digital, basically very thoroughly because what people aren't gonna mark it down with things like you said, every single crew member, this and this. They're probably gonna rely on like what I said. Basically, the DJI app, it already records the stuff for you. They have it on record. I don't think anyone's going that crazy just from what I've seen, anyways.
Do you have backups, Alan? You got backups in case your phone craps out?
That'll be in the cloud, won't it? But that would be your paper backups. That's where your paper system comes in. And because then also you've got to have a thing, and there'll be no power or whatever, and the inspector will come around, and you'll get this heavy tomb out of the thing. Yeah, there are apps that can do all of this for you as well out there. People have Kitty Hawk does quite a good job of doing that, and that will show you your airspace and all that sort of thing. But you don't yet have a Lanc or Lance situation over there. You don't have to digitally announce your flight yet, or do you in Canada?
No, that's only if you want to fly in the controlled airspace and you need the permission and so forth, but not just for a regular person if you're flying in Class G.
Okay, because that no doubt is also on their pun intended radar as well. There's, it's definitely the model of some of the UTM providers is to pay to play for everybody to fly. It's just madness, isn't it? Why? Can't believe we're even talking about this. Really, it's just madness. It's madness.
Yeah, I think another issue here is that regulators are dealing with a new animal, and that is the public, because previously aviation regulators dealt with pilots, because you couldn't fly a plane unless you got a pilot's license. You couldn't just wander up and hire a plane without showing your pilot's license. Not many people just buy one to fly without having learned to fly first and gone through the process. But drones are different. You can go into a store and buy a drone and fly it without a license. So whereas the aviation authorities have a lot of control over pilots and manned aviation because they can threaten to pull that license, and without it you can't fly. And practically, not just in theory, but practically it becomes difficult to fly without a license unless you've got your own plane and you've got it hidden away somewhere. But with drones, it's totally different. And it's much easier for the public to say, no, don't care about your regulations, I'm going to ignore them. Don't care about your certification, your licenses, your registration. And so I think they're expecting much higher levels of compliance than they're actually going to get. And that's true probably all around the world. I think we're going to find that compliance levels will not match the expectations, certainly in the UK, of the regulators. And therefore, they're going to have a big problem on their hands because they haven't done a psychological analysis of the group they're intending to modify the behavior of. And so their behavioral modification, things like write a rule, people will do that, ain't going to work quite as well as they expect.
So what it sounds like you've been through quite an involved process, Alan, and you can already fly. We know that. What would it take for you to now take your skills and knowledge and convert that into a ticket that would allow you to fly commercially? Is there a sensible progression? So I think that's something that's missing in our industry. You can't sort of go up through the training levels. You either go and be a commercial pilot or a private pilot. So is there any, would what you've done now help you in any way towards your commercial flying?
You mean like everything from the flying and training and stuff, you mean?
Yeah, like your exam, does it count for anything?
Yeah, well, basically from the whole course and stuff I did, I just got my radio license today. It's a basically ugly piece of slip. It's just a piece of paper. So I can use that to communicate with traffics and so forth.
Oh, did you go and get a real proper RT license, an aircraft radio international license?
I got it just today.
This is such a, I don't know
here. I am a restricted operator for the aeronautical qualifications, etc., from the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development of Canada. So I can use the
radio. Does it give you a call sign? Do you have a call sign, Alan? Does it give you a call sign? Do you use your drone registration number or something?
No, it just gives me like a registration number here, like a certificate.
So how do you identify yourself when you're making calls?
I have to use that alphabet. What is it? Like the what you call it?
The phonetic alphabet.
Alpha, yeah, exactly. Alpha, Lima, Alpha, November.
I think they just.
You got to use your name.
Yeah, and then you basically indicate what's going on in your mission. So basically, what the next course is just going through the flight test, which I haven't done yet because I'm still kind of thinking, who should I try doing the flight review with? And at the moment, in terms of the flight reviews here, there's no actual standard, so everybody has kind of a different guideline of what they expect to see in these flight reviews. So that's kind of what I'm researching right now to determine which school to go with, so to speak.
It's interesting. That's it, because when you're flying an aircraft, you use the aircraft registration number as your call sign, obviously. But with drones, if Alan's going to be on the ground and communicating with air traffic, how does he, using your name isn't very good, because I'm sure he's not the only Alan in Canada. I mean, I thought they would have had some unique. Usually, when you get an operator's license for some part of the spectrum, you get a call. If it's a licensed band, you get a call sign, or you have some way of uniquely identifying yourself to other traffic. But there doesn't seem to be one in this case.
You use the prefix unmanned aircraft operating 5 kilometers south of wherever. You just say unmanned. But yeah, other countries you would put the call sign as well. So fair play on getting that ticket, but by demanding this, and in South Africa, they ask that you have to have that license as well. And you should hear some of the radio calls I have heard people make. And what you have to remember is, should you go down this route, aircraft miles away will hear your inappropriate radio calls. They really will. They will be miles away and they hear it. And you won't hear, because you're on the ground. There might be another, just over the hill, there's another guy operating a Mavic, and then over that hill over there's another guy. So that's 3 of you that are on the ground out of radio range. But if you're in the air as a pilot, there might be 3 of you yabbing on and making calls that they can all hear. You can't hear each other. It's just, it's kind of one of my pet hates. I've forgotten, one of the great people and the commenters and things said to me, ARPAs are digital devices. They don't want to be in the old analog way of doing things, which is exactly right. And in America, somebody actually called Mayday when they're
Really?
when they're on the airband radio. You got a Mayday call out when his aircraft's batteries went flat and down it came.
Wow.
So there I am, bimbling along in my Cessna, and I half hear a Mayday. Now it's going to be panic stations, because I'm going to assume it's a manned aircraft. So it's, yeah. Sorry, I'm completely on my ranty horse. And well done for passing the exam. It's worth doing these. It's always worth doing these things, but please use caution. Please use caution. I do that. What you rant on some about that, Bruce, or have I ranted enough about it?
Oh no, carry on, mate. You're doing a good job.
But you're hopping to skip away, because so now if you go and do your PPL manned license, you've got that bit of paper. Is there equivalence, I wonder, in the manned system? It sounds like it's so complicated. I can't believe it's so complicated.
That was one of the jokes in the school. They're like, after this, you guys better get your airplane pilot license, because they said what we're teaching you is exactly the same thing like what people would fly an airplane would do.
And the trouble with this is, as much as we're joking about this, there's going to be some useful unmanned aviation knowledge that isn't being imparted. You're going to be picking up stuff you don't need, and there's going to be holes in your training of the stuff that you should have thought about or used.
Well, come on. I learned how to fly a plane through a taxiway. Why do I need to learn that when I'm flying a drone? It's in the taxiway of an airport.
Just unpack that a little bit more. What did they have you do?
Like, do you know what a taxiway is? Like in an airport, how like they enter? I had to learn about that. All the procedures, how to fly your plane, like in and out there. Like, why am I going to fly my drone in an airport like that?
Wow.
I was like,
Now, someone tell me these people know what they're doing. I cannot believe it.
Wow. Well. Again, well done, you. But I mean, so what's the age limit in Canada then?
14.
It's basically 14 for the basic and 16 for the advanced.
So we'll have another couple of 14-year-olds of it. So my youngest sons will have to go through all of this,
unless you're supervised by an adult.
Sure, but that adult will have had to have gone through all of this.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you get your advanced without doing your standard first?
Yes, you could. You can just skip right to the advanced. Yeah.
And you're doing it. I guess you must be on the advanced if you can taxi around at an airfield. Technically, you probably need like the special flights operations certificate in many ways,
just because of the area you're in and all that, and with all that rules of like what advertise events, like just all these nitty gritty stuff. Because eventually, I get
that's the other one that's really good, isn't it? If your local school's having a bit of a fundraiser and they put an ad in the local community newspaper, and you go along with your drones, they say, "Come and show people the drones." You can't fly there because you can't fly an advertised event.
Yeah, technically it's no. And then one of the interpretations, though, like basically you'd have to research, is what they meant by advertised event was supposed to be if they sold tickets to the event. That's what they said, quote. But then, you know,
it's not defined in the regulations, and if it's not defined that way, people can say, "Oh, that's what they mean." But ultimately, when a judge looks at the regulations, he goes, "Nope, disallowed," because it doesn't say that in the regs. It's what's black and white in section 901 that counts.
Yeah.
So that means competitions are out then. Advertised competitions must be out.
No, because MAAC has an exemption to the rules as long as you're flying, I believe, at an MAAC field under MAAC rules, and you're an MAAC member in good standing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Rybat's asking, did you get aerodynamics, weather, and emergency procedures in your training?
Yes, and I'm not exaggerating. Yes, I had to learn all that stuff. formation of clouds and everything like that. Yes.
Alan knows that you must return the seat tray to the upright position before landing.
You must return the hostess. Yes, that's right. I'm not that I'm not that against the teaching of weather, because that'll save you a bit of money down the line if you can recognise weather coming.
Yeah, but if you're flying within visual line of sight, you can see the weather coming before it affects you.
But the weather is actually an interesting point, though, because you talk about modern day, because we were taught how to basically read all the materials on the map, like it's all coded and jumbled. But if you actually go on like the site, they actually write it in plain English, and they're even saying, why do you need to learn this when you just go on the site and it tells you every single information you need about the weather now? Like that's an example where we have to learn everything like the old-fashioned way as well.
Yeah, if your drone is wet, it is raining. If your drone is moving, it's windy. I mean, there's simple solutions to these weather problems. If you can't see your drone, it's nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, or you're facing the wrong way. Yes. Well, that's I think also it's a whole aviation problem, manned aviation problem as well. It's that there are so many fantastic modern ways of getting all this information in plain text and fast and accurate, and the regulations haven't kept up with it. So people are still using. I mean, when I was a youngster, my job was reading that off the teleprinter and then putting it into plain English with a bit of Chinagraph pencil on a wall, you know, ripping stuff off teleprinters coming in overnight and reading and interpreting notams. But you don't need to do that anymore. You don't need to send in the youth to go and do it. Send the youth. And Mike Double Dub saying, I think the amount of training needed depends on what you want to do with the drone. And here we are talking about private flying in Canada. It's got to be relevant. Maybe we all need to come up with a syllabus that we think is more relevant to all of this. Why haven't the schools come together and done this? Why are they just slavishly doing what they're told? I wonder. Nicola has an opinion, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to know what course would I need to take if I want to stalk out airports.
You need to go to the eco-terrorist website. They've got plenty of courses you can apply there, but you got to wear a hemp t-shirt and tofu jeans and sandals, and have your hair and dreadlocks and things. There's a lot of criteria for passing into the exam.
Yeah.
Smooth Virus is busy looking at your flying site, Nicola, and then Bruce's flying site, and he doesn't see any model planes on the flight line. I guess that must be in Google Earth or something like that. That's because they're all in their secret underground bunker there. My truck is parked outside the hangar.
My truck is parked outside the hangar on Google Earth.
But that gully you've got, that drain that everyone misses, you can't fool us. That's the entrance to the secret underground stuff there. We know that.
Yeah.
We know that.
That's for when Ron's flying. We need somewhere to retreat safely.
And then Tom Fraser saying, if you crash your drone, will they send the Canadian equivalent of the NTSB out to investigate? And that is an interesting question, because of the reporting regulations for various things, depending on what size. So not only, you may end up having a duty to report an
I
incident.
believe I saw something about that in the regs, but I didn't actually make too much note of it because I never crash, but other people may find it important.
Yeah, well, yes. Absolutely. But of course, yes, it would never affect any of us, obviously. And then also mentioning about there's a fire, battery or fuel fire, or you wipe your finger off on the prop. Yeah, if there's any form of injury, no doubt you would be mandated to report that, I'm sure. They just won't have the people to boo boo, good evening. They won't have the people to administer this. Humber Thames. Southwest very yes, the UK shipping forecast being mentioned there and sailing away, playing in the background. But I like the weather stuff. I'm a bit of a weather nerd, so maybe that's just it. But I do think in commercial operations, it could save you. If you look at the weather forecast, it could save you driving somewhere. But yeah. So what did you learn about transponders and all that sort of thing, and what codes you need to select on there if you're in emergency?
Yeah, frequencies and all that stuff. Yeah, you had to learn all about that. I'm serious. You think I'm joking? I have to learn all
No,
about
I don't think you're joking. I don't think you're joking at all.
He didn't tell you about the 3 hours he spent in the 737 simulator as well, did he?
That's right, yeah. So yeah, it's a cross-country flight to America and back or something. North Atlantic routes, high altitudes.
No, because you cannot leave Canadian airspace with your drone.
Oh, can't you? Is that on the rules? No cross-border flying?
No cross-border flying, prohibited.
Squawk 7700, that's right. Goodness me. How many people are going to be complying with this? This is just nonsense, isn't it? It is just nonsense.
That's what I said. The regulators are in for a rude shock.
Yeah. And then, so do you think you would have to go to a school to learn this stuff? Is it the sort of stuff you could do at home?
Well, just like I said, from my experience, the schools are still figuring it out at the moment. They were basically just dumped a bunch of these regulations and they're kind of interpreting it themselves. Like realistically for this knowledge test, like even some of them suggest, I mean, it's kind of bad, but some of them suggest just keep doing it until you pass it because it's so random. The questions, even though it's irrelevant, it's a matter of luck of you not getting like some question that's completely irrelevant right now. So even with the training that you get, you cannot even prepare for that test like 100%, which makes, it pretty obvious that test is very disorganized, it's irrelevant, etc.
I can't believe there's no study guide. I mean, nobody sets up exams without a study guide unless they want people to fail. It's lunacy. The idea of exams is to prove knowledge, but you've got to impart knowledge before you can test people on it. But they haven't provided that part of the problem.
It's obviously there's a market for one of those, isn't there? In the comments, Mike doubled up saying, "What do we think about ADS-B? I like ADS-B. I think that's a good idea. I'm not so keen on ADS-B out. There's lots of very experienced people in the comments that might want to chip in as well. I think it's a good idea. I think it's effectively free with the Cube carriers now, and DJI Gear's got it. So yeah, but it's great. The trouble is, manned aviation's got to have full ADS-B for us to make any use of it. That's the only point it falls down.
You've also got to wonder what is the point, because manned aviation should be above 500 feet. You should be below 400 feet. You should be able to hear an aircraft coming if you're operating within line of sight. It's like belt and braces. Why do you need the braces if you've got a good belt?
I've never heard that phrase unpacked like that before, and of course now you've said it, it's obvious that's what it means. I never knew that. Yeah, another thing I never knew. Yes, if everyone's operating right, it's not the magic bullet that people in the drone world think it is that's going to make everything better. It's a nice to have. And if you're flying in a valley and you're both flying at 100 feet in a valley, you're not going to see it till very late. And it does raise the questions of how do the get out of the way algorithms work? What's the standard on that? How will we avoid the manned aircraft coming our way?
When a multi-rotor, cut all motors and float gently to the ground.
But, well, yes, return to kit form. Yes, that's right. And Ryback saying frequency management would become an issue, and that if we had all had out, yeah, there aren't enough codes. Is it 8-bit hexadecimal code? I can't remember how many bits it is, but already there's not enough. There's not enough codes to go around, and you've also got power, another radio, another GPS, and it's bloody expensive on the outside of it. Yeah, that would overwhelm ATM. Yeah, exactly. ADSB out as G36 pilot, and that's again, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about the urban air mobility world and how general aviation will need to see all of these delivery drones and all these air taxis. They'll go nuts if they're the screen pinging up with this, that, and the other going on. You just couldn't take it on board.
The core thing will be limiting the range of these devices, and so you won't want to use LoRa. You want something that has a maximum effective range of maybe 5 kilometers, because beyond that, people don't give a damn where you are, who you are, what you're doing. Because so there needs to be a good way that compartmentalizes those transmissions, and it also means you can then effectively dynamically reuse some codes and parts of the spectrum and things to get more out of the same resource. So it requires a bit of thinking, but I've actually been thinking about that. I wonder, it might be a nice little DIY project to put a transponder on your drone and just invite everyone to just build one. It'd probably cost you like $10, put it on your drone, and then if suddenly the regulators find, wow, there are thousands of drones with these transponders on, it looks okay, we'll use this standard. Why won't reinvent the wheel? Because they've never reinvented the wheel.
Yeah, well, there's FLARM. There's full FLARM or Open Glider Network.
FLARM is so expensive because of the proprietary nature of the software. You've got to get a license for FLARM.
It is, but you could use Open Glider Network, which is exactly the same thing. And
that's huge. That's huge. You can't put that on a 250-gram drone. I'm thinking something the size of your thumbnail. I'm thinking, really small.
This is a huge way, because this has got the screen, so this is a huge way of doing it, and this is the even.
How do you see the screen from the ground?
Sorry?
How do you see the screen from the ground? You got an FPV camera on there looking at it.
It's people do that sort of thing, don't they? I've seen some really nice jets with full with full moving displays and instruments and everything. And I've also thought that was really nice when it's on the ground. But I think if I spent all that time, I would make that part removable so that when I went flying, I didn't have to. Yeah,
I do recall in my early FPV days positioning my camera so I could have my battery voltage thing sitting in front of the camera so I could see the state of my battery in the pre-telemetry days. That worked quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Team Black Sheep sells FLARM, and FLARM has been accepted in EASA for helicopter use. The UK is working on lots of allowing lots of different standards, as it were. It's only America that's hell bent just on ADSB, really, and that's because of the huge amount of money military contractors. I need tinfoil. Military contractors have spent on putting in the ground stations and services for it. They didn't see every man and his dog having Raspberry Pis. In the UK, a nation of train spotters, 360 Radar has nearly 1,000 receivers out there now, and their low-level multilaterated coverage is fantastic. And the CAA will tell you it beats the official system. And those
in the USA, you know that if it's Boeing, it's good.
Well, yes. Well, they just bought a company today, didn't they? They bought a maintenance company.
They bought Rotor Riot.
That wasn't Rotor Riot. That was Red Hat. And now it's his letter of intent. Have we spoken about that? I can't remember. Did we speak about that? Oh, all right. I reached out to Chad, and he said that it is just a letter of intent at the moment. And so he'll come on and talk to us when it's no longer a letter of intent, I guess, when it's a done deal. Would you think for a moment he thinks we might ruin some sort of negotiations or something like that? Is there any chance we'd ever do that?
Oh, no, never. No, we don't. We're not skeptical at all. But it's interesting, actually, that they would think of that, because already another drone supplier bought into Rotor Riot. They injected some capital and took a holding in it. So is Red Cat thinking of buying Rotorite because it has another drone vendor involved in it, or what? It'd be nice to know the background on what's going on there. And I'm sure Chad will be more than forthcoming when he appears on the program at some stage in the future.
Yes, and Red Cat is a leading provider of secure blockchain, not Bruce chain, blockchain-based distributed storage analytics and SaaS for the drone. Is that software as a service? That means, doesn't it? So I think SaaS for that drone industry. Through its innovative projects and leadership, Red Cat provides solutions for regulators to track and review flight data, insurance companies to insure drones, and pilots to become compliant with regulations.
That sounds like a good fit with a group of people that call themselves Rotorite and have people like Bob Grinder and drive buildings and bridges and things. Yeah, it's a perfect fit.
Red Cat's success is driven by a commitment to deliver unrivaled innovation that makes drones trackable, accountable, and the sky a safer place. So there we are. It's a perfect fit. Perfect fit. Sorry, Chad. If you're
Maybe they've been commissioned by the FAA to put Rotorite out of business, so they just buy them and shut them down.
Well, yes, that would be one way of doing it. Yeah. Well, let's see how that goes. But they must think that there's a chunk of market still there and a chunk of people that need taken in hand. Interesting. Very, very interesting.
If I was betting money on the market at the moment, I'd be betting on sub 250. I think that is going to be big, and I think we're at the point where the technology is just becoming viable to make sub 250 gram machines that have the performance in terms of camera drones of things like the Spark and the Mavic, and it's only going to be a matter of months away before we start seeing these really flooding onto the market. And at that stage, all the regulators are going to have to stand back and go, ooh, do we drop the limit or do we not? And it's going to be a watershed time. At that stage, they may say, well, actually, we haven't really had any problems with these little craft. Maybe we'll just leave it as it is. And therefore, that'll be great because we'll get all those big craft effectively will just disappear over time because no one can be bothered. And we've minimized the problem. We haven't removed it, we've minimized it. Because when you have a sub 250 gram versus a DHL delivery drone, who's going to win? Smash! Little bits of the little drone, the big one, just carry on, chop it up, spit it out, no problems.
May live in interesting times, as they say. Now, look, we've gone past the hour. We started early. Did anyone else have anything else before we put the hammer down on this? Going one. Going twice. Got to buy that hammer, haven't I? Alan, thanks very much. The voice of Canada.
You're welcome.
Canada calling. Thank you very much for joining us again. And all I can say is fair play to you, jumping through all these hoops so you can fly a Mavic and have your daily vlog. Remind us the name of your channel again.
Just my name, Alan Yu.
Alan Yu. There we are. Looking on the Tube of the U, but Alan Yu on the Tube of the U, and you'll find him there. My friend Tony is my wife.
What?
Okay.
You're not logged into Pornhub, are you, Gary? What's going on there, mate?
Anyway, if someone would care to explain in a diagram form for me, you have to write very slowly what on earth that means. That'd be fine. Good on you, right until I fly. Bruce, XJet RC Model Reviews, and Nicola, of course, is Archangel RC. And with that, thank you very much, folks. See you all again, 2100 GMT next week. If you're flying this week, be safe. If you're in Canada, don't forget to write it all down. And we'd like to see documentary evidence of it. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.